We've been lulled into rhythm, into choruses that hum beneath consciousness. We call it entertainment, yet we rarely ask what it entertains, or who. For generations, music has been our mirror and teacher. It shapes language, behaviour, memory. It carries messages that pass through us unnoticed because they come wrapped in melody. But what if the melodies are disguises? What if the songs that move us most are the ones that quietly train us to accept decay, obsession, violence, and despair as normal? We've been sleepwalking to a soundtrack of suggestion. Well, it's time to wake up and listen, not to the beat, but to the spell beneath it. You're listening to the Luminary Room, and this is episode 14, Songs for the Sleepwalkers. I'm Nico, the voice behind 369 Lumineer, and today we're diving deep into the frequencies that shape belief, desire, and obedience. The songs we celebrate without ever questioning why. Now, a minor caveat before I get started. This episode contains interpretive readings, pattern-based assertions, and theory-driven connections. So I encourage you to listen with curiosity and a critical mind. So sit back, take a breath, and enjoy the next 15-minute illumination. As someone who's written about music, symbolism, and Faustian bargains in several op-eds, I don't want to indict individual artists. Many of them are witnesses, survivors, or simply people telling private truths. But what I want to do, bluntly, is show you how popular songs repeatedly project and normalise dangerous behaviours, how they dress appetite in melody and then teach a generation to mistake the dress for intent. This is a deep dive, no soft edges, no tiptoeing. I'll quote only a sliver of each lyric and then I'll tell you, plainly, what the line projects when it lives on loop in culture. I'd play the clips, but that would cross into copyright, and respect for the artist still matters. So, let's begin. This first one's been a favourite of mine since the early 80s. Golden Brown by the Stranglers. You may recall the line, golden brown, texture like sun. The song is widely read as an eroticised ode to heroin. The line dresses addiction in tactile warmth. The drug becomes a lover, the needle a ritual, the habit an aesthetic. That is not neutral. When dependence is made to sound sensuous, inviting and beautiful, the cultural effect is to glamorise consumption. You start to teach impressionable listeners to associate collapse with texture and comfort. Overplayed, repeated, looped, that line does more than describe, it seduces. It says, this thing that ruins lives feels like sunlight. That message is dangerous. It normalises a catastrophe by coating it in romance. And here's one from the 90s grunge era, Semi-Charmed Kind of Life by Third Eye Blind. The lyric is, I want something else to get me through this semi-charmed kind of life. That single line is a professional dealer's pitch disguised as youthful yearning. The song's upbeat bounce sanitises a narrative about crystal meth and transactional sex. Where the real story is degradation and dependency, the production makes it seem like a temporary joyride. It offers escape as identity. Again, repetition matters. Sing this chorus enough times on the commute and the listener learns to view self-destruction as stylish inevitability. The track normalises addiction by reframing it as lifestyle, and that reframing lowers barriers to empathy for victims and to temptation for those still standing at the door. Now, this next one is genuinely evil from as recent as 2020. And with this one, I still don't understand why commercial networks thought it was okay to broadcast. And that's WAP by Cardi B. And here's the lyric. Tie me up like I'm surprised. I want you to park that Big Mac truck right in this little garage. Make me dream, make a stream, out in public, make a scene. Now, I'm not policing desire. I'm simply naming structure. The song turns intimate acts into spectacle. It broadcasts explicit sexual claims as a public performance and suggests that visibility equals empowerment. That's not always false. Sexual empowerment is real, but the track functions in an economy where clicks, shares, and branded sponsorships commodify private acts. The cultural work here It teaches sex as leverage and applause as validation. When sexual prowess is sold as power on a mass scale, it trains a generation to equate worth with performative availability. That's a social shift, and we should call it what it is. This next one's from an album that was certified multi-platinum. The song I'm on Fire by Bruce Springsteen, and you'll definitely recall these lyrics. Hey, little girl, is your daddy home? Did he go away and leave you all alone? I got a bad desire. Sometimes it's like someone took a knife and cut a 6-inch valley through the middle of my soul. A bad desire for what exactly? This is obsession made tender. Springsteen's desire lands on someone who is unattainable. A boundary is about to be crossed, and the lyric frames transgression as aching devotion. Read plainly, the song eroticizes trespass. The hush, the longing, the slow burn. They are not neutral devices. When longing is repeatedly tied to boundary-violating action, tenderness becomes the excuse for pursuit. The cultural danger is that repeated exposure teaches listeners that violating a person's space is part of the emotional romance arc. That normalisation is simple and pernicious. Or what about Every Breath You Take by the Police, which goes a little like this. Every breath you take and every move you make, every bond you break, every step you take, I'll be watching you. Now, this projects surveillance as love, control as care. This is not a subtle lyric. It models obsession and then reverses it into affection through melody. Because the song is soft, millions have used it as a soundtrack to weddings, to declarations. That normalisation does the work of erasure. It covers the coercive core with a warm arrangement so we no longer name it for what it is. And the cultural consequence? Well, lines that read like stalking become reframed as devotion. Those reframings teach tolerance for monitoring and possession, and they quietly shift the boundary of what we call romance. And what of the global classic Hotel California by the Eagles? You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. Now, this song projects entrapment dressed as glamour, a gilded cage of pleasure. Many read it as an allegory for the industry or for addiction. Another more uncomfortable reading, which we must entertain, is that the song rehearses and normalises forms of domestic and institutional violence under the veil of nostalgia and luxury. It teaches acceptance of captivity. The bars are ornate, the wine is fine, the lights are dim, the damage becomes a trade-off. That's how systems of control run. They dress harm as indulgence and then call compliance a choice. Now here's one for the boomers. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds by the Beatles, and I'm sure a lot of you are aware of this. A section of the lyrics go like this. Tangerine trees and marmalade skies follow her down to a bridge by a fountain where rocking horse people eat marshmallow pies. Now this is surreal, dreamy, nursery rhyme psychedelia that, intentionally or not, became shorthand for LSD trips. The problem is less the dream than the lullaby frame. Songs that make altered states sound childlike and beautiful reduce the perceived danger of chemical experimentation. Ambiguity allowed the lyric to become an invitation. Try this and you'll see marmalade skies. The cultural effect is to anaesthetise altered perception, dramatise escape, and to conflate wonder with chemical erasure. That glamorisation invites risk. Or what about Pumped Up Kicks by Foster the People? And the lyric I'm referring to is, you better run, outrun my gun. Now, what does this project? Listen to the melody and you'll smile. Listen to the lyric and you confront the mechanics of a child planning violence. The dissonance here is not accidental. The jaunty production sanitises the horror and allows listeners to shrug off the lyric as ironic or catchy. That insulation is dangerous. By making a school shooting scenario singable, you domesticate atrocity. You make it background noise. The result is desensitisation, and the more ear candy covers violence, the less urgency we bring to prevention, and the more normalised that violence becomes in youth culture. And we mustn't forget Born to Die by Lana Del Rey. The lyric fragment, don't make me sad, don't make me cry. Now, Del Rey is essentially selling tragic glamour. The plea becomes doctrine. Suffering is beautiful. Fatalism is desirable. Self-erasure is romantic. That framing is not an accident of style. It's a cultural pattern that normalises suicidal aesthetics. When heartbreak is consistently presented as poetic destiny, we erode the stigma around self-harm in the wrong direction, not toward help, but towards aesthetic reward. The danger is that the listener learns to seek validation through self-destruction, mistaking attention for healing. We must be blunt. Glamorizing ruin dissolves the impetus for real care. Let's take Blurred Lines by Robin Thicke with the lyric, "I know you want it." Now, it's a short sentence with outsized social harm. The vocal presumption here erases refusal. The delivery diminishes the space for a no. The song's controversy rightly centred on consent because the lyric models presumption as seduction. The music smooths over hesitation and rewrites it as flirtation. That cultural teaching matter-of-factly reduces agency. The line's ubiquity normalises a conversation where consent is assumed rather than explicitly sought. And finally, the one that still fascinates me most, the song that wraps sexuality and spirituality into one hypnotic chant, Like a Prayer by Madonna. The now very well-known lyrics go, "When you call my name, it's like a little prayer. I'm down on my knees, I want to take you there." Now, this needs to be called out. The juxtaposition of prayer language and sexual posture collapses sacred ritual into erotic submission. The lyrics, "down on my knees," is not ambiguous in context. It's sexualized, and the framing links worship to oral sex imagery. The effect is to sanctify a sexual act with religious language, turning devotion into an erotic act and worship into submission. That linkage can be read as empowering for a performer reclaiming desire, but the broader cultural outcome is repeated conflation. Sex and submission framed as sanctity. The pattern reshapes where we place reverence. And for whom? Okay, I could go on, but hopefully I've made my point. But I can guarantee that you're probably aware of so many more than just these 11 tracks. Songs that suddenly sound different when you really listen. I'd generally like to know which ones come to mind for you. Leave them as a comment, share your thoughts, because this conversation shouldn't end here. And let me be clear, this isn't about being prudish or too old school to appreciate clever lyrics or artistic expression. It's about awareness, about how easy it is for meaning to slip past us when melody feels good and repetition makes it familiar. So, here's my take. Across these 11 tracks, 3 mechanics repeat. Number 1, enhancement by melody. A soothing arrangement reduces cognitive alarm. Pair a hostile or dangerous line with a tender ballad, and audiences are more likely to sing along than to interrogate. Number 2, euphemism and ambiguity. Whether through metaphor, double entendre, or scenic imagery, the songs obscure harmful content and thereby lower scrutiny. Ambiguity is a protective device, both commercially and psychologically, for messages that would otherwise repel. And finally, number 3, cultural rehearsal. Pop hooks, as they're known, are repetition machines. Rehearse a line across playlists, adverts and social feeds, and it becomes a script people perform in life. That rehearsal turns private harm into public script. But I want to be blunt here. I'm not saying every artist is complicit or malicious. I'm not saying every lyric is a conspiracy. Often the artist is confessing or memorialising trauma or performing persona. Sometimes the songwriter is exploring the depth of human darkness to expose it, and that matters, but it doesn't absolve the song of its social consequence. Intent and impact diverge. A sincere confession can still act as a vector for normalising dangerous norms when amplified without context. So, what do we do with this knowledge? Perhaps start with listening as an active habit, not a passive comfort. When a line catches in your throat, ask yourself who benefits from your comfort. Ask what behaviour the lyric excuses. Ask where the applause lands. Secondly, demand context. Push for responsible framing when dangerous themes enter the mainstream. If a song poeticises violence, addiction or coercion, insist that the conversation includes the victims and the systems that reproduce harm. And finally, cultivate counter-narratives. Celebrate songs that model accountability, repair and healthy desire with the same appetite we give to glamorised ruin. Rebalance the playlist. This podcast is not a call to censorship. It's a call to attention. It's a call to hold aesthetic pleasure and social responsibility in the same hand. If we don't interrogate the music that writes our moods, the melodies will keep writing us. Remember, words program the mind. They're spells. Repeat them long enough and they become belief. Stop questioning them and you follow the narrative. We've been sleepwalking to a soundtrack of suggestion. It's time to wake up and listen, not to the beat, but to the spell beneath it. You've just experienced another illumination session in the Luminary room. If today's episode gave you insight into how melody masks meaning, how lyrics can normalise harmful scripts, and how culture quietly rewrites what we accept, then subscribe, share, and help spread the light. Every listener shines a little more on how melody masks the meaning and on the quiet, repeated lines that shape us. You can also read my article on Medium titled "They Sold Out When Fame Becomes a Faustian Bargain." I'll leave the link in the summary notes. So until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and stay aware. This is Nico, signing off.